Welcome back everybody, my name is Tucker and today I wanted to talk about a handful of extremely well-known former NBA players that aren't in the league anymore but could be eyeing a comeback in the near future. Now obviously it can be very difficult to break back into the league once a player either unofficially retires or signs with the team overseas. And even though each of these players have varying likelihoods of actually returning to an NBA court soon, there's still a possibility for each of them. I'm basing their place on this list off of either public comments or their play in other professional basketball leagues outside of the NBA, or both. Let's go ahead and get started. Number 1. Andrew Bynum. The first player on this list is a guy that kind of came out of nowhere to declare his desire to make an NBA comeback in recent weeks, Andrew Bynum. The soon-to-be 31-year-old is still fairly young compared to most players that leave the league and attempt to come back, and he was very productive throughout his career. A two-time champion with the Lakers, he was named a 2012 All-Star and selected second-team All-NBA that year as well, posting arguably dominant career-high numbers in what would end up being his last truly productive season in the NBA. Never the most durable player, he only appeared in 60 or more games in 3 different seasons and was last seen in the league in March of 2014 at the extremely young age of 26. However, back in September it was reported that Bynum had hired an agent and was looking to schedule workouts with NBA teams with the hopes of making a comeback. But there hasn't really been any other news about that possibility since. A player with his history of lower body injuries is always a concern, and even if he was fully healthy and in great shape, something that he struggled with at times in his career, his lumbering style isn't nearly as well suited for the NBA now as it was back when he was winning championships in LA. Big men are now required to be much more nimble and agile on the perimeter defensively, something that was an issue for him even before he turned 30 years old, and Bynum would have to be a very strong offensive force to make up for his deficiencies on the defensive end. I could see him potentially fitting in well in a bench role for a team in need of an offensive punch off the bench, a spot in which he could take advantage of his size advantage against the much smaller reserve bigs of today's NBA. But in the end, I would honestly be surprised if we ever see Andrew Bynum in an NBA uniform again. Number 2. Chris Bosh. Next up is the guy that inspired this list in the first place after comments he made while being interviewed at the Knicks-Wizards preseason game this week, Chris Bosh. This isn't a new development, as his desire for a potential comeback has been reported multiple times in the past few months, especially once LeBron James decided to take his talents to LA and the Lakers were looking for cheap help to fill out their roster, and Bosh's obvious familiarity with LeBron after their days in Miami. But his recent interview has sparked new interest in the possibility among NBA fans. Bosh played in nearly 900 career games across his 13 seasons with both Toronto and Miami, and was playing extremely well with the Heat even after James decided to return to Cleveland in 2014, being named an All-Star in 2014, 2015, and 2016, part of a string of 11 consecutive All-Star selections from 2006 to 2016. His switch to a more defensive-minded role at the center spot in Miami after primarily playing as more of a post-scoring four in his younger years was a huge key to the success the Heat had during the Heatles era, and his near constant willingness to adjust and adapt his game to whatever the team needed was one of the defining characteristics of what is very likely a Hall of Fame career. Basketball Reference currently has Bosh listed as over 99% likely to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. However, in February of 2015, a blood clot was discovered in his lungs, and although he tried to find ways to continue his career with varying degrees of success, it turned out to be a reoccurring issue to the point that the Heat refused to allow him to play for them, declaring it to be a career-ending medical issue. Bosh last played in the NBA in February of 2016, and now at 34 years old, he continues to state that he hasn't ruled out a return to the league. As great as I think he could still be with his ability to shoot as a big and his mobility on the defensive end despite his age, it's very unlikely to me that any NBA team would be willing to take on the risk of his medical condition. There is a ton of liability involved in signing a player that a different franchise has previously refused to let on the floor. And obviously I'm not a doctor, nor am I completely familiar with his current medical condition. But as much as I would love to see Bosh back in an NBA uniform, I wouldn't recommend it to a team, nor would I expect it as a fan. Number 3. OJ Mayo. Moving on now to an entry that might come as a shock to a few of you, but there's actually a good amount of evidence to suggest that OJ Mayo could be making an NBA comeback at some point. The former 3rd overall pick back in 2008 was banned from the NBA for 2 years for violating the league's banned substances policy, but is now eligible to be reinstated to the league. He's been mostly out of the minds of most basketball fans since he left the league in 2016, but Keith Smith tweeted just a few days ago that Mayo has gotten interest and contract offers from multiple teams overseas, but has decided to wait out a bit longer to try and make his way back onto an NBA roster, potentially through the G League. Mayo has reportedly been working out with NBA players this offseason in an effort to stay in shape, and might be the most likely player on the list to actually wear an NBA uniform again, as he only turns 31 in November. In his time with the Grizzlies, Mavs, and Bucks, he never managed to live up to the very lofty expectations set for him, but he was a skilled player that could shoot the ball well and make plays for himself as well as others, which is exactly the kind of role he would need to fill to actually make an NBA comeback and a positive impact on a team. His previous issues with banned substances could obviously continue to become an issue, and if other guards such as Jamal Crawford and Monte Ellis still haven't been signed, I don't know that the chances of Mayo making a comeback are all that strong. But with him still being relatively young and having a game that matches up well with the modern NBA, I could definitely see it happening. Number 4, Nate Robinson. Next up now, we have one of the true fan favorites of the last 15 years in the NBA. 3-time slam dunk contest winner and 5'9" guard Nate Robinson. Most well known for his dunk contest prowess as well as his time with the Knicks from 2005 to 2010 and various other exciting stints with a handful of teams, Robinson was one of the better athletes the league had to offer in his time in the NBA. Despite modest career averages and struggles at times defensively, he could always make plays for himself and his teammates, with his best season coming from 2008 to 2009 in New York, posting over 17 points and 4 assists a game. The former Washington Husky was last seen in 2015 with the Pelicans and has since bounced around overseas before re-entering the minds of NBA fans by playing in the recently started Big 3 League. He reportedly held off on signing a contract in the Lebanese Basketball League with the hopes of earning an NBA training camp invite, but that is yet to happen for him. Even with that said, Robinson did spend some time in the G League in 2017, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him work that route again if he's really serious about prying his way back into the league. And I can think of one former coach in particular that could be interested in his services should they need help at the point guard spot this coming season. Number 5, Amar'e Stoudemire. Last up now is what I feel like is one of the most forgotten NBA stars in recent memory, but also one of my favorites, Amar'e Stoudemire. I don't think people realize how good this guy was, especially with the Suns. If you exclude the 2005-2006 season in which he played only 3 games, Stoudemire averaged over 20 points per game in every season from his second year in the league in 2003 all the way through his first year with the Knicks in 2011, including 3 seasons in which he averaged better than 25 points per game. In his first year in New York after signing a huge contract, he led that 2010-2011 Knicks team to the first winning record the franchise had experienced since Jeff Van Gundy's last full season with the team in 2001. Unfortunately for the former top 10 pick and 6-time All-Star, injury issues began to plague him soon after, and he was last seen in the league playing for the Miami Heat in the 2015-16 season. He went on to play in the Israeli Basketball Premier League after leaving the NBA, a path he's once again chosen after signing with the team in late September following an appearance in the Big 3 League. However, as recently as a few months ago, Amare was adamant about his desire to return to an NBA roster and declared himself to be in excellent shape. And although obviously being under contract with the team overseas and turning 36 years old in November doesn't bode all that well for an NBA comeback, I wouldn't be completely surprised to see this story continue to be reported over the next 6 to 8 months, and might even result in a team pulling the trigger on a G League or training camp invite in the future. It certainly isn't the most likely of the entries on this list, but it definitely still could happen. And there you have it, 5 former players that could be planning an NBA comeback. I wanted to put an emphasis on the could part because even though it is fun to talk about the possibility of a former player, especially a well-known and renowned one, making an NBA comeback, these kinds of things almost always turn out to be just rumors. However, the Bynum and Mayo cases specifically do catch my eye as distinct possibilities, depending on how well they've gotten themselves back into NBA shape and form. But anyway, that's going to be the end of today's video. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Once again, my name is Tucker. I thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.